and this blind faith that the technology was more than sufficient to replace an attorney. And so one of the things I've seen with a lot of entrepreneurs is this belief that President Reagan would say, verify. You always want to trust the people you do business with, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, if I trust them, I don't need to get things in writing. And so one of the things that I've seen with a lot of entrepreneurs is this belief that
thank you very much for being there. This Entrepreneurship and Business Intelligence podcast today with Senen Garcia, law, business, technology, and trust in the modern society today. Thank you very much. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your professional journey and how you get into law. I'm a lawyer as well. Actually, in my journey, my father told me that a lawyer will be always respected. How was your journey? How you got into law, Senen?
that was very interesting. So I got into the law. I chose to go into the law because I had a business that unfortunately an individual took advantage. I was very young. And as a result of that, the individual basically committed a bit of fraud and took advantage of a partner of mine who was very, I don't want to say the word naive, but believed in the best of people, did not believe that people could do such bad things. In any event, I said I didn't want what happened to me to happen to anybody else. So I wanted to basically go to law school to be able to prevent that from happening to someone else.
And then also working with entrepreneurs and companies, and what patterns do you constantly see in the entrepreneurship and people that are involved in business here in Florida?
It's a few things. From a legal perspective, one of the concerns that I have is, and I understand, I do understand the reasons behind it, but a lot of them using alternate sources. First, it was Google, and then it was AI to basically be their lawyer. And this blind faith that the technology was more than sufficient to replace an attorney. And maybe somewhere down the line that might be true. One of the things that we've determined or seen is that is simply not the case. The technology out there is a great aid. It's a great assistant, but it still does not have the capabilities of replacing a lawyer. And so one of the things that I've seen with a lot of entrepreneurs is this belief that we're a commodity and we should be charging very little because we could just they could go to AI and do what they need, and that's simply not the case. And unfortunately, I still find a lot of entrepreneurs come to me after the fact saying, well, I need to get protection. I drafted this agreement. The agreement's garbage. It doesn't really do a lot of protection because they used AI. And it's a situation where it ends up costing them more than just simply getting without. Now they're having
advice too late as
right.
well.
And now they're having to basically hire a lawyer for much more money than had they had just paid a lawyer the smaller amount of money at the beginning. So that's one issue. Another issue that I've seen is a lot of, from a business standpoint, I want to say the lack of openness to collaborate with other entrepreneurs. I'll give you an example. I was at a founders event where they were looking to get funding, and even some of the potential funders saw opportunities of synergy between two different entrepreneurs as, hey, you guys should partner because individually you guys have a product, but if you guys were to partner together, your product could be stellar. And they weren't interested. It was like it was more of an ego thing than even the money. And that's something where they need to kind of set that aside and realize the bigger picture is that they're providing something that could be amazing. And even if they have to share the limelight, it's okay. So those are, I guess, the two things that I've seen.
Yeah, as a professional, do you think sometimes people put their experience, maybe as an entrepreneur or as a business person from many years, and they want to execute whatever the case is the way they want, no matter what you tell them? That's something familiar for you, and how you overcome that, Senen?
Well, it is familiar, and it is an unfortunate position. It's a very closed-minded position. They're not open to criticism. They're not open to critique. Overcoming it is hit and miss. Sometimes I can overcome it and sometimes I can't. What I have done is that I try to relate to them, because one of the things that I've done and that has been somewhat successful is that I too am an entrepreneur. So I know where they're coming from. And I try and see where the disconnect lies, and having to go through the motions of running through their scenarios so that they themselves can come to the realization that I already am, which is you need XYZ. So it's more of a relationship. It's understanding them and bringing them to your position without basically dragging them to your position. Because I find dragging them to your position, they're not interested. They're not interested. They're not motivated, and quite frankly, they're taking offense to it. So the best approach that I've found is normally to work with them and make them understand that this is the better approach as opposed to the one they're going down.
And right now, here in Florida, we're seeing many people coming from California, New York, and many entrepreneurs and regular people. You see some kind of misunderstanding about the Florida law against other states when it comes to entrepreneurship here, or when it comes to whatever experience that you got with other people that they're just coming here because of tax reasons, personal reasons, or whatever, or they like Florida more than other states. What's the experience in that regards?
Well, the big ones you mentioned, that they're aware of reasons to come here, that the lower taxes, the pro business. But I guess it's more of a refreshing realization on their parts. So just to give you an example, as you mentioned, we have people coming from all over, not just even in the country, from out of the country. We have many people coming from other parts of the Caribbean, Europe, so many different individuals. And I was talking to someone from, I don't remember if it was Martinique or France, although I've come to realize it's the same. So I might be, that's why I'm confusing it. So they have their laws. And I was having this conversation with them about employment laws and how they work because they weren't familiar with that. And when I explained that, in the state of Florida, we're a right to work state, you can terminate someone for any reason or no reason at all. They were like, "Oh, wow, that's great. And how much of their salary do you need to pay for after you terminate them?" And I said, "Unless you have a contract that requires it, none." And they're like, "What do you mean?" There is no requirement. It's as soon as you terminate them, again, unless there's some kind of contract that you have, you don't have to pay them anything. They may get unemployment depending upon why they were terminated, but that's a separate matter altogether. And he was just shocked. He was like, "Wait, you mean to tell me that?"
Very
Yeah, where it's like
friendly
I don't have to pay
liabilities.
you because apparently in like France and Martinique, if you terminate someone, you by law have to pay them for a whole year. And I said, "Whoa, yeah, that doesn't exist here." So
In Venezuela too, it's the same. So it's the liabilities for employment. So this is really complicated.
you don't have those problems. Here it's a lot more pro business, it's a lot friendlier. Even within the country, we're a lot friendlier. I mean, compared to places like California or Illinois, we're a lot friendlier in that aspect. So it was refreshing for them. So I think what I've been seeing is they don't realize that there's actually more positives than what they had originally thought. They knew about the taxes. They knew maybe about lower cost of living. They knew about, although some that's changing, but whatever. They knew about the weather and all these other things, but they didn't know that we have other things that make coming to Florida actually better.
Yeah. And well, right now, entrepreneurs are navigating in this inflation, technology, AI, regulations, tariffs, social media pressure, and it feels like the speed of business itself change, Sen. But in the side of business challenges, Sen, and you as an attorney, what legal mistakes are those small business making the most right now?
Well, the best one is the easiest one is that they're trying to play lawyer. They're trying to use AI. They're not consulting with attorneys. They're making contracts, not knowing what they're agreeing to. They're either pulling it from AI, pulling it from Google, pulling it from wherever, and each contract is unique. And there are certain things at the same time that should be in there, and they're making mistakes on that front. The other aspects is with respects to how they run their business. They're not doing a lot of compliance. There's a lot of dictatorial mentality. They're not recognizing that there are processes and procedures. It's not like, "Oh, this is my business. I can do whatever I want." It's like, well, that's not entirely true. You can't just do whatever you want. You can't just say, "Oh, I don't want this person to be an owner. I don't want this person to be a partner. I don't want, certain things." I go, and there are certain mechanisms where that's permitted, where you can just eliminate something. But you can't just do that with vendors. You can't do that with partners. You can't, there are certain rules that you need to follow, and they're having a hard time recognizing because of, most likely due to their lack of business acumen. Like, there are a way of doing business that you can't simply not do.
And actually taking the advice into consideration or into the strategy Senen, about this case, that it was an execution of a lien. It was just a property, a hotel legally acquired. So the owner for this property, they're French, but then maybe this misconception of, okay, I have been in my business many years and I know what I'm doing, and then they got that lien in the property, and they thought, okay, I will not gonna pay and I'm gonna be okay. They are just vacating the property because of this. So it's something about the mindset further than that, Senen, in case that we were in touch as well.
I mean, and you see a lot with the tech people, because they're the tech entrepreneurs. They know tech and they think they know business, because they think, oh, business is easy because tech is so difficult. And I go, business is different. And it for many of these tech entrepreneurs, it can be difficult if they don't understand it, because it's dynamic. There's a social metrics to it. There are soft and hard skills, and more so soft skills, on how you manage and run businesses, that you need to be careful. For people like us that do this on a regular basis, it's rather easy. But when it comes to someone who's never done it before, it could be a minefield, a legal minefield that they could get burned on.
As entrepreneurs, we should seek and take decisions informed. Well, technology is making up, and don't talking about AI, because right now that's like in the speech of the universities and so on, they're banning the AI term. As humans, we should be informed and take advantage of the professionals. That's the most important, on time, because no waiting until we have all the water inside to get into the real advice and the real strategies that are into that. So what, in your perspective, trust ethics in business today for Senen Garcia?
Trust is always an important aspect. You need to trust who you do business with, and it's very important to understand the distinction, because there's trust and there's, as President Reagan would say, verify. You always want to trust the people you do business with, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, if I trust them, I don't need to get things in writing and have documentation. You should still have that. Because not because you don't trust, but because people develop amnesia. They forget things if you don't write it down. So that's what I always tell people. It's better to have everything in writing and with it, so that if they forget, oh, I didn't say that, I go, well, we have a contract here that you signed that says otherwise. And those are the things that matter. So it's those things that make an important distinction. But at the same time, even with those writings, you want to have trust. You don't just trust a document. You want to trust the people you do business with. You want to trust your advisors that are advising you, that they're going to look out for your best interest. If you go into a world with, we're now, and I know we didn't want to bring it up, but, you could have deep fakes that are created by AI. You can't trust that, but you can trust in real life staring at you. And trust is still a high level commodity that, unfortunately, people take advantage of, which is why you have to be very selective on who you trust. But
with social media and everything else, is maybe the authenticity facing a crisis right now.
No, it is. It very much is.
And also for professionals and building this credibility in an environment full of misinformation, how we can build that credibility in your perspective?
Being relevant, being top of mind, showing our expertise. For example, I mean, I'm always out educating people. I don't necessarily expect or seek in those scenarios I get a client out of it right there. I mean, obviously I would hope so, but my goal is to educate the public. By doing so, I'm increasing my credibility. Doing something and doing things where there's no expectation of something in return, I think that goes a long way to credibility. Providing something that they would have to purchase, or providing something that they would have to, pay a fee to obtain in terms of information, shows that your integrity is there. which goes towards your credibility because you didn't have to do those things. You did them on your own. And it's something that I do
Yeah.
myself. I could charge for every little second of every little thing I do. I don't do that because I don't need to. And the real business, in my opinion, is a more serious matters.
Senen, and in the side of technology, the other side of the new money, the stable coins, the bitcoins, the smart contracts. What is your take on those technologies, and have you been involved in some of those contracts or some operations involving those technologies?
So the latter question is yes, I have. I was involved with a company that actually did tokens. The name of theirs there was Token Pay. I had helped them for a few years handling their legal matters, and I had seen and even drafted memos in support of a cryptocurrency. I don't see it obviously going away. In fact, in many ways, I see a lot of countries that have hyperinflation have and can, and in some cases should use cryptocurrency to get themselves out of that financial burden that their currency has. So I think the future of this currency is going to continue to grow. To what end? I'm not sure. Because there is still fiat currency out there that still has value. And unless that fiat currency is replaced by cryptocurrency, which I don't see that happening anytime soon, I think there's still going to be a little bit of a secondary market of the cryptocurrency, second to fiats, because the governments are going to hold back, at least the governments that are wealthy and have strong currencies. I think you're going to see them still hold, but you may see some shifts. The US, for example, has
We have
one, we have the
we have
strongest.
here in the podcast, we always have this question. You answer if you want to answer. Do you have Bitcoin, Senen?
No, I personally don't. Quite frankly, I would have maybe, but at this point, I think the ship has sailed. The return on investment is just too high. It would have to drop. And listen, there's nothing against it. As I said, I was involved in a company that did it, so I give you the objective response. I see it as a future. I think that's not going anywhere.
And I think, well, in my take, I think there's more opportunities than threats in the terms of thinking about Bitcoin and stable coins and new ways to handle money, because in the side of entrepreneurship, it's we have other communities involved in those type of payments, in those types of solutions, and we get involved with new clients if we get into those technologies as well. And also with the changes in economy and what is happening, that the US is maybe being replaced, something else to take into consideration when we talk about money and investments, after happening that changing in paradigms in the world. Do you think something like that it's worth analyzing, Senen?
Sure. I mean, like I said, I think it's certainly a possibility, and I think that that's happening. I think it's going to continue to happen. I can't tell you the speed. Funny enough, it was actually kind of tangentially going on this, but just to prove a point. In 2019, I was invited to speak at a conference in New York about remote work. Well, I remember it was October of 2019, and the reason they had invited me because at the time our office pretty much went virtual. This was in 2019. We had went virtual like about a year and a half ago. And the organizers of this event said, we want you coming into our event and speaking about that. And the question that was asked of me then, huh? Question that was asked of me then is, do you think this is going to be the future? And I said, yeah, I think this is going to happen. I think this is going to stay. I think, I don't know how long it'll take, maybe 5 years, but I think we will see a shift to remote work. And look what happened a few months later. We made a massive shift to remote work because of the pandemic. Things have started to kind of lean back into more in-house in office, but I don't see remote work going away anytime soon.
I'm agree. One underrated business skill for Senen Garcia.
That I see out there, I would say your soft skills, being able to communicate with people. That is the one thing that I'm seeing still weakness. And mind you, this was a weakness 20 plus years ago. There was this issue with hard skill and soft skill communications. Hard skill were easy. Soft skills were always the most difficult one. And this was 20 plus years ago. And the only difference is that our technology has made it easier for people in their mind to say we can avoid the soft skills. But sadly, it's still a prevalent issue amongst people I see. They don't have the soft skills. They don't have the methods to communicate for whatever reason. They just don't want to, don't know how, and it holds a lot of people back that have great potential.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a world of changes, and you need to go with the changes in everything you do, and every skill you learn is important to go ahead. So yeah, business is changing, and also it's important to understand that I've been for myself, I've been involved in business, in sales from 20 years, and in many of the products that used to sell 10 years ago, for my case, paper. So right now people don't print so much as they used to print 10 years ago. So everything is it's adjusting, and sometimes many entrepreneurs, they should just change gears. How Senen Garcia see that changing gears in the entrepreneurial side, and what are the challenges for that? I need to change my business because my business doesn't work right now. Focus on other product or other skills in my life. That's another thing, because we're seeing changing gears now. The coders are changing totally because of AI. So that's a good point to analyze as well.
I would say the biggest, as far as what is the pivot, let's be honest. I've been seeing this for 30 plus years. Technology has been the biggest area of pivoting in the business. Your competitors are taking advantage of the technology that has come out, the new methodologies that have come out, and you aren't. And you're going to, lose out to these other competitors that are taking advantage. And this has been going on for I don't know how
From the
long,
beginning. Yeah.
decades, I would say, long before I was alive. And it's just that ability to recognize that technology and things will continue to change, and be open to that and be receptive to it, and accept that you need to change. As one person once said, the only thing that is constant is change. And what you see is a lot of individuals that they don't want to. They want to keep things the way they are, and they're the ones losing. And I can see multiple examples of this over the years. You could change the type of technology, but it doesn't matter. They need to upgrade, they need to shift, they need to pivot into this new way of doing things. And they choose not to, and then it usually ends up being very disastrous.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you very much, Senen, for being here at 305 Office
Chris,
Business Intelligence Podcast.